Hello and welcome to another episode of This Round Is On Me. This one is particularly exciting because it's all about our new book called Diamonds for Breakfast, which is out now and available to pre-order. And I have with me my guest today, who is my co-author on the book, Vishwas Kulkarni. Welcome to the show.
Wow. This is a moment.
Vish, not a virgin of many things, but you are of podcasts.
That I am.
Welcome to the studio.
Oh, yeah.
But I, to introduce Vishwas, I'm actually going to read the bio that he gave me for the book, and we'll start from there. So, Vishwas has survived the vinyl player, the cassette tape, the VHS recorder, the laserdisc hype, the CD revolution, the Discman that always skipped, the DVD library, the floppy that was doomed from the word go, the iPod that everyone showed off, and the MP3 player that commuters used to ignore each other, or just him maybe, on Mumbai's Western Railway, before settling down with his MacBook Air to sate his ravenous appetite for pop culture. Vish, that was one long sentence, and I hope the book isn't written this way.
Actually, that comes from a bio I wrote, quote unquote, for an article on Array to celebrate Dawn's 40th anniversary. And I just started writing for them. We were intending to write like a pop culture column, which for some reason did not work out. But that bio is from my...
Vish, is it array as in like array yaar, what happened? Or is it array as in like array of
No, it's
amazing?
It's not an array. It is an array, which is a website. And an array is also a term you've used so many times through this book, but that we will discuss later.
And I have to say, I did ask when you sent me this if a word called sate even exists. I was like, did you mean spate or did you mean satiate or sate? And you corrected me.
I said, yes, that is a word. And then I think we've had so many arguments about wish. That word does not exist. Then I just send you like a Merriam-Webster, whatever you find online. And I think we've had those moments. But yeah, sate is a word.
We have had those. Well, listen, we're going to take a very quick break and we'll be right back to dive into this amazing book.
Hey everyone, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. We have a special announcement introducing Club Paisa Vaisa, where you get episodes of Paisa Vaisa 3 days before release, bonus and ad-free content, and access to the full show archive. So get your yearly membership today for only rupees $6.99. Log on to club.ivmpodcast.com/Paisa Vaisa. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus talks to Puneet and Ayushi about railway tracks being robbed in Bihar and Kharge wearing Louis Vuitton in the parliament and much more. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to Ashna Modi, clinical psychologist, about the dynamics of love, the key to a healthy relationship, and much more. On page 10, Abbas, Meghnad, and Karan talk about students being suspended over casteist jokes, spy balloons traced by the United States, and more. And on Anish Thing, Anish talks to Raghav, founder of Headphone Zone, about the audio gear available in India starting under rupees 5,000. Once again, do not forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We've got some super cool and exciting stuff over there for you and your loved ones. Follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, then do not forget to spread the word. It really helps us a lot. And of course, don't forget to rate our shows on whatever platform you are listening to them. And of course, all our video shows are also available on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Yono SBI, Capgemini, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back, and Vish, welcome again to the show. So, listen, first and foremost, what on earth made you agree to do this with me?
Well, Gauri, I remember I think it was the May of 2019. I was still in the midst of my Lionsgate screenplay. I was writing a screenplay for Lionsgate then with my team. And you said, Vish, why don't you come over for drinks and I want to talk about something. So I was like, okay, maybe it's like we're just bored. It's the summer. Nobody's gone anywhere. And then Jay made those like Campari cocktails that he does so well. And I think I had a couple. I'm giving you a very conservative estimate there. But I think we had a couple of drinks. And then at one point you were like, Vish, I think we're ready to do a book. And I thought we should collaborate with you on this, And I think I remember going back and mulling over it. And then suddenly summer turned to monsoon. And it was like June, I think mid-June. And it was pouring. And at one point I got one of your messages. an aggressive message. You're like, Vish! And there were 3 exclamation marks, and you were like, Vish, send it. And so then I was like, hey, give me a couple of days. And then I think I sent some sort of a proposal, but then y'all were like, this sounds like something we could work with and all. So we were like, okay, let's have a few more preliminary meetings. And I was, by the end of the second meeting, I was sort of excited. Again, as I said, I did have my doubts because a hagiography, so to speak, which is...
Don't use all these big words now, okay?
Well, I'm an author now. But like a hagiography is like, like a very... these are such beautiful, great people. This is what they've done. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to... I'll become the coffee table book writer unto my dying day if I do this. So I had some doubts, I have to say, when I first even said yes. But then as we started talking about it, I think the format itself took on a very original, cool, Hatke take.
We'll talk more about that. But yes, you did play hard to get. And what is it? A hagiography wouldn't have gone beyond like 1 page in our case, because I don't know how many nice things you would have had to say. But I just dialing back a little bit to, I think, 2008 when I moved back, and when we met, ironies of irony, we met at the Jaipur Lit Fest, right? And who would have thunk, where we were doing everything but writing, and it is ironic considering now it's our mission in life to be at JLF.
You know what? Like the funny thing is when you say the hagiography couldn't have been more than a page. I have to add that, like when I first came for the opening, literally in the first week, you all had a soft launch party, and I met Jay for the first time, and I thought to myself, oh my God, such a sweet couple, but this restaurant's gonna bomb. And obviously, I had to take back my words, 10 years later when we were having that conversation about the book, because things had panned out so much more differently.
Shit, we should have put this on the back blurb. But no, you're right. And it was a pretty crazy ride because, we started this in what, November, I think, was it? Or sometime?
No, we signed the dotted line in July 2019. So we spoke in May. By June, you sent me that "Are kya ho raha hai" sort of SMS. I sent a couple of pages. It was like, let me see where this goes. And by July, I think then we
sealed the deal.
We sealed the deal.
And then lo and behold, we started getting into it. And I think it was, we'll talk more about the process and where we thought we'd start, what this book would be. One thing we were very clear was that it was not going to be a recipe book or a cookbook. I think like from the 1-pager hagiography, it would have been a no-pager cookbook if it was going down that route.
I was having like nightmares
anxiety,
about that. It's just like a cocktail snap. And
I would have been like, Vish, can you recipe test this, please? We need to do them 3 times and they have to work before they can go in the book. Yeah, no, don't worry. That would have been torture for me too. So I think for me, the reason for doing this was definitely not because I had nothing else to do. In fact, it's been a pretty long process. So that started mid 2019 and we're in early 2023. And it's been obviously the writing is not something that comes to me naturally, which is why I asked you to get involved. And of course, you've been there, like you said, from the soft opening till date. And so I think there are few people who know the restaurant journey that we've had as much as you do. But why did I do this? I actually don't know. I think it was a moment of madness or a moment of vanity, maybe.
You're forgetting that the big moment that you were planning, and things didn't pan out that way.
Oh yeah, the 10-year anniversary.
It was the 10-year anniversary.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
The COVID.
No, so that
crisis.
happened actually before COVID. So yeah, this was it. You're right. like many things. No, but it was so this was mid 2019, and my marketing team was like, "What are we doing for the big 10, the big 1-0?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And then we were like, "Oh, should we write a book?" As if it's something that you just like, you just produce in a couple of months. Little did I know. But yeah, that was it. It was so Jan 2020 was going to be the 10-year anniversary of the table.
And little did I know, I was like, okay, 6 months, you've got somebody who wants this like 10-year anniversary book, let's just belt it out. Well, things don't John Lennon, I think, said that. He said, life happens while you're busy planning other things.
That's
and
true.
I think we were planning all this, and then COVID happened. We also, luckily, found a different way to do things. We first started with a lot of transcriptions. I remember just like...
So it's a first for both of us. I mean, of course, you've been writing forever, but, fiction and mostly fiction, I'm kidding. But, you've been writing for a long time, but I think writing a book is a whole different ballgame. And, of course, writing about a restaurant journey. And initially, I think we just felt that there were so many stories of this crazy ride that we'd been on that just needed to be put out there. You always hear of the glamour of restaurants and the success stories and, chefs and things like that. But no one really understands the madness behind this business. And I think that's and there was plenty of that, which we had talked about for years. And, we were always sort of telling you stories about it. But, no one had really put this out there, at least not in India, as far as I knew, hadn't put this out there for about a restaurant. And that was the idea that, to share that, but also look back at the last 10 years. What's come out, I think, is very different. But when we actually started doing the process, first of all, you had to kind of extract that knowledge from us, right? And so what was that process like for you? How did you sort of think about how to start writing this?
Well, when we first started, we were doing very extensive interviews, and y'all were talking about this really chaotic journey about how y'all started, things were not working out. There were hilarious stories about how just finding a space in Bombay was such a nightmare. And then obviously all the weird sort of anecdotes that came out, and the book found its format. Like, I think I'd come back with reams and reams of like sort of just interview material, and then you're reading something from, say, an entrepreneur's perspective, or sometimes we talk to your staff and come back with their perspective. And I was like, oh my God, but how do you make this interesting to a reader? Because, and I think one of the interesting things was like, if I get bored with an aspect of an interview, I would just lop that off, And I just literally started keeping, so I hate to use the word, the saucier aspects of what was being discussed. And that's when I think the format came through, where as opposed to being, to use your favorite term, hagiography, what came through was like a more anecdotal history of the table. But it came from those interviews and those very sort of outlandish stories, so to speak, that would sometimes emerge. Sometimes there would be like really human stories. And so I think it came to us very organically, and touch wood. I mean, now in retrospect, one can say that, oh my God, COVID was the worst thing that could have happened to us because we took a 1.5-year break. But what did work really beautifully for us is that material. And the first thing I noticed, because nobody has objectivity on themselves and the business they run, I was like, let me just remove whatever is boring to me. And that became really simple once you start doing that, and you keep, to use your least favorite term, the saucier aspects of what's left. Is when you can somewhat start telling a story.
You mean the more engaging aspects?
The more engaging aspects, And I was like, okay, if it's going to be interesting to me as a writer or to you as a writer, it's perhaps going to be interesting to the reader.
Yeah.
But that's also when it struck me that I was like, oh my God, we will need material, because a lot of it in the beginning was us yakking and being like, oh my God, did that really happen? And
so you, I remember, asked us to just like start from the beginning and just talk, and with no kind of filter whatsoever. It was that I couldn't remember a lot of the things that we would, and then suddenly he would say something and I'd be like, oh my God, I completely forgot that happened. And you, who has this crazy memory of an elephant, I mean, you put an elephant to shame, frankly. You would remember things that we had said to you, 7-8 years ago, or something that had happened, or a time that you were there. And I was like, that is crazy. I completely did not even remember that happened. So I think it was a lot of, digging into our sort of, that old memory box, and recovering those scraps, at least as far as I was concerned. But I think Jay, funnily, he actually surprised me. He had a very different experience with the restaurant, obviously, to me. And so a lot of what he was able to recall, or his version of what he went through, or incidents that he sort of was part of that I may not have been, was actually, I think, it was quite an experience for me to go through it all over again.
No, it was a trip, and one of the things that really fascinated me when I first started the process is, firstly, I love it when a story starts with protagonists in mid-narrative. Like, things have happened to them, and then they land up in Bombay city. You had clearly come to Bombay. Why you came to Bombay is in the book. That's for readers to find out. And Jay had come to Bombay in the wake of...
well, that's for readers to
that's
find
for
out
readers
too.
to find out too. And I love this sort of like mid-narrative coming back to Bombay, and then, hey, we'll figure this out. And I think all of us... at some point in our lives, not all of us, but some of us at some point in our lives have been through that process that, hey, let me come back to Bombay because it's home, And so y'all had both come back in 2008, and that's essentially when the journey of the table started, because the table only started 2 years after that. And so I got a far more personal side to your stories, and I found that very interesting as a prelude to when to the restaurant opening.
But I think what I really love about the book, and I have to say this, is that it's actually, while it starts about us and coming back to Bombay, or in my case coming back and him moving to Bombay, I was very clear that I didn't want the story to be about us, and it's not through the eyes of Jay or me. It's just a fun narrative about the last now 12 years of the restaurant, and that's actually why it was very important to me that you don't come in as a ghostwriter, but that you bring your perspective to all these stories that we've been through, all these anecdotes that we shared, and filtered it through your eyes of what you thought would be fun, because I think we connect a lot on our idea of what's fun for the most part. And it's very, the book really needed to be about the restaurant business and the restaurant journey and the experiences, rather than it being hagiography. I'm never going to forget that word.
No, you are right, actually. And Gauri, that actually lent itself to a format that I'm really thankful for, because you were very clear that, look, this is not just our story. Please talk to our staff. Please talk to people involved. Let's get their perspective in. I had no experience of the F&B industry aside from the fact that I was an occasional food critic. Whenever the food critic got pregnant at the Mirror, sometimes I'd go and fill in. But it was like sort of very lovely to have this sort of lens that you insisted on, and it lent itself to a historicity of Bombay, a contemporary history of Bombay rather. We're not talking about like heritage structures and stuff like that. This was like a restaurant in Bombay, which is 10 years old, and we're telling stories emerging from that, and at the same time talking to staff just gave it this very humanistic, it gave it a very human edge, and it became even more human in the context of the pandemic when things shut down, and then a story started emerging even from that. I think the pandemic is a moment which has transformed all of us as
of
human
course.
beings.
So this, by the way, is what actually transpired. So we were nowhere near our 10-year anniversary deadline. We soon realized that this was not going to happen in 6 months. And,
and then we at one point we said we'll make it an 11th.
Yeah, so then we were like, it's okay. 11 is also a big number.
I said it's a lucky number. it's a lucky number.
So clearly that was not, the 10-year thing didn't happen. And then we were working towards 11. And then lo and behold, there's a little disruption in all of our lives. And, jokes apart, it was it was a crazy moment where I remember speaking to you and saying, Bish, right now we're just in survival mode and our whole focus is on, our team and paying their bills and paying their salaries, and this book is needs to be put on hold.
It was almost over. It was weird.
Yeah.
Because, the world had ended, right? Luckily, the Lionsgate project was still extant. It was still on.
Lionsgate was still hopeful about OTT, which, by the way, was a good thing, right? Because it did blow up during COVID. That was the one form of entertainment that everyone did have.
No.
So
They did have that, and which is why they were like, hey, we can continue with this project. But at the same time, there was enough disruption where one of my co-screenwriters had to move to Kerala. We no longer could use the office. Suddenly, there was all this paranoia of being all over the place. But I was like, okay, if this project is on hold / over, it wasn't the end of the day. So I was like, oh my God, sad, because I'd gotten into it, but we had barely started, if you remember.
I know we'd done a few chapters.
We'd done 2 or 3 chapters.
Yeah, and I was really happy with the way it was going. So it was disappointing, but then I honestly, it was the last thing on my mind at that point. At least during that April-May time when the shit really hit the fan.
But the important thing is that it gave us
well, eventually. So then
in retrospect.
Yeah. So then in October, November, when things opened up and it felt like there was some sort of we hadn't completely crashed and burned, and we were kind of coming back to life a little bit.
No, we started a year after that.
Was it a year after that?
Yeah, because we had the first lockdown, we had the second lockdown, and then by the end of it, y'all were just like, God. At one point,
you're right. 2021.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just again memory lapses.
Yeah, and at one point, you had moved to Alibag, and you were like, Vish, I'm done with Bombay and all. I was like, oh God, she's really lost it, man. And you were happy, and you were in that farm and all wherever you were, and you were like, I'm done with Bombay. This is the life and all, and it was Armageddon when you think about it. When somebody's running a restaurant, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, I'd rather just be here.
Yeah, so it was a good year and a half later when then I was like, I had to move back to Bombay because things did open up, and it was just, we came back, and then I was like, oh.
And Lionsgate also gave us that leeway because there were so many things happening with them. So they were like, okay, you take your time to finish the screenplay, which I think got done in August 2022. And then I took a month's break. I went to Madhya Pradesh and discovered my inner Indian. It was just really beautiful. Actually, it was a 2-week drive through the state. And I came back and I was like, just chill for a month and then just sort of reset. And then you made that call in October or something. And you're like, Vish, I've been thinking.
Vish, it was 2021.
Yeah, 2021,
yeah,
but a year and a half had happened.
Yeah.
Sorry. So in August 2021, I finished the screenplay. I went for a holiday, came back, and in October, something you called. And we were like, okay, let's start. And we had, I don't think viewers know about this, but we had Nilanjana Nag Pereira, who was our editor. So I checked in with her, being like, hey, would you be keen to come back onto the project? She was very disappointed. She was like, what is this and all? Because she's very meticulous, as you know. But she was like, hey, let's start too. Because I think, what I'm saying
By the way, the book being not as saucy or not as as much of a bitch fest as it could have been is thanks to Nilanjana. So you've got the Nilanjana. Thank you for keeping us in check. And
Nilanjana, truly, man. Thanks for just having that what is one called chastity belt on. All apologies, but no, it was fun. So then we reconvened, and then by then we had another set of stories. So I was like, wow,
And actually that changed the narrative quite a bit, right? Because not just the fact of COVID, but then I think it was beyond just about the table, right? Because then we were like, oh my God, this is, and we went through a lot, which I've talked about on a lot of previous episodes about closing down a restaurant and then reopening a new restaurant, which then also closed, and then having a third avatar, which finally, touchwood, has still survived. But it became, there were so many more stories about which went way beyond the table, and then we decided that this was going to go beyond that as well, and then the anniversaries didn't matter so much.
No, the anniversaries had gone past us, well past us. But as you said, the pandemic actually gave it a different sort of format, and it became a human interest story. I'm not trying to peddle that angle. But yeah, and it became an F&B story because I remember, I mean, it came to notice that those many people are hired by the F&B industry. And I think at one point you did mention that you were really shell-shocked or very disappointed that why did the government not give dole-outs? Again, then we're not a first world country, but why were there no dole-outs to the F&B industry? I think a lot of people were very disappointed. Also, I was just gobsmacked with a number you had come up with in terms of how many people are hired, and that was a staggering amount of people.
No, it's crazy. But one thing this book is definitely, I mean, we need to sort of now give our listeners an idea of what the book is about. But one thing it's definitely not about is, firstly, it's not a 101 guide to opening a restaurant. It's not about all the sob stories of
because you'll never want to
COVID.
open a restaurant after reading this. But anyways,
I think it's a cathartic exercise for me of just dumping all the, I'm not going to say trauma, but the drama of the last 12 years and just putting it out there.
And I love it because now that you're saying this about, well, this is not a 101 F&B sort of book. I remember once coming to you and
It's the 101 to tell you not to do it.
because
basically.
once I mentioned, I said, Gauri, I'm getting ready. I'm learning so much about the F&B industry because at some point it was my dream to open a cafe in Sri Lanka or Bali, because I love cooking.
Vish,
And you were like,
I would
and it
kill
will-
to see you running a restaurant.
and you were like, and Vish, it will remain a dream. And I was like, okay, well, she's coming from a perspective because so much had transpired. And no, it was like amazing.
It's more like 101 reasons not to open a restaurant. 101 Dalmatians.
But coming back
restaurant style.
but coming back to the book, I think what's exciting is that it's an anecdotal history, and there's just a lot of fun nuggets and Bombay history, Bombay geography, and we have a lot of
I think it's South Bombay as well,
Yeah,
right?
it's also very South Bombay.
It is. So look, we can't deny the fact that our restaurants predominantly are located in South Bombay, and that brings with it its own little, slice of, I guess, spice or masala or whatever you want to bring it. I mean, South Bombay is a little country in itself, and that is the setting for the book. So
it used to be a trip just coming to Colaba and just walking. And at one point I kept threatening. I said, Gauri, once the book is done, I'm going to be lurking the streets of Colaba for way too long.
Vish,
And
please don't.
but no, it's been amazing just to see how we dived into that aspect of Bombay as well, And I don't know how much to reveal to readers, but just like aspects about what it takes to open, where the permissions are, the colonial aspects of opening a restaurant. That's a surprise that readers should not we should not reveal to readers. But yeah,
there's some specific aspects of being in Colaba that are interesting from a restaurant business perspective. So look out for those. But also, it being in that location and also next to all the, the main sort of 5-star luxury hotels of the city, obviously had its own share of crowd.
And the Bade Mia Gully and the pasta lanes.
So we were like equally in the shadow of Bade Mia as we were of the Taj Mahal Palace, and that's brought its share of characters to the book, and I think it's a slice of Bombay history.
Well, Gauri, tell me one more thing. We've spoken about my process. I wanted to ask you, when you picked up the pen, and you've written quite a bit in the book as well, what was your experience of suddenly putting on a writer's cap? You put on a lot of caps. I've seen that, you're on Instagram, you're picking up food awards, you're doing this, you're doing that. What was it like being like, okay, I'm going to start hammering away at my laptop?
Vish, I've done some ghostwriting for you, by the way. I want to just put it on the record that you once asked me to review. What was it? Was it The Crown? Was it the first season of The Crown?
It was the first season of The Crown, and we needed quote unquote a celebrity, and I was like, it was one of those days where I really wanted to close the issue, and I was like,
And
"Chalo,
Vish
just
was just like called me and said, "Can you just write like 200 words about the Crown?" Because I'd binged watched it like with no intent to write about it, and and so I just want to say.
And
that
now you're
I've-
reading that that Harry's book, Spare and all you're reading, right? So
No.
you've had this obsession with the British royal family. So I was like, not exactly wrong in calling you, but they were like, somebody to write about like the Crown and all. So you said, Vish, when do you want it? I said, well, I want it in the next 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
And to your credit, you did that. And I think at one point you'd gone to Sri Lanka. And I love Sri Lanka, by the way.
yeah. So I've done my fair bit of writing
course
for
you
you,
have. Of course you have.
as you know, as when you were in your mirror days. So yeah, I've always dabbled in writing, but obviously not ever thought of writing a book. And also, fun fact, my sister is a writer, and if I sort of
And I've ghostwritten a lot for her in turn. But that's besides the point.
that's going to be the quote that goes to her. But yeah, and so I was always wary of venturing into that territory. But besides the fact that I'm not a writer, so I have written a bit about travel, a bit about food. It's just things I enjoy, and it's nothing sort of it's nothing too tricky. But I think the first bit of the writing that I was doing was firstly correcting a lot of the factual stuff that you'd sort of put in. But it there were incidents which I remembered, and you had to be there, right? So there was only so much that I could narrate that to you and do a sort of decent job of it. And at some point, it was just easier for me to write it from my perspective. And of course, then you and Nilanjana edited that beautifully to make it more readable and less boring. But I had to bring a lot of that fact into it, having been there in the moment. And I think the bits that I've written are mostly the times that the incidents where I was there, like either I was so I mean, I think let's talk about like one of the chapters.
Well, like my favorite moment when I was like, oh my God, she is a writer, was like when there was Snakes and Ladders, which was a celebrity, quote unquote, celebrity section.
Why is it called Snakes and Ladders, Vish?
Well, I think Bombay is a game of snakes and ladders. You can climb, but then you always find a snake at some point, and then you slide down. And it's an Indian game.
This better not be what happens after the book comes out, by the way.
But it's and I was researching Snakes and Ladders, and Sapsidi is an ancient Indian game. And I was like, wow, that's a great title to have. Earlier I was thinking like Stardust. We were toying with terms, and well, that was a chapter where you would have to come in because you were the one engaging the Stardust aspect of the table. And so I wrote something. I wrote a few things here and there based on what I'd heard, done my little masala giri / giving it that extra zing. And then we were like, Gauri, over to you. We waited for a couple of weeks, I remember. And then I remember you sent something back. And then Nilanjana is like, oh my God, like, this is crazy. Yeah? She's pretty racy. I said, well, what do you think? And I think that was the start of our process. And we were really excited then. I think that's when we knew that we had a book. Because I think when you have a collaborative book, such as the one we've done, there has to be a chemistry. And no matter how much we yak together, at the end of the day, there has to be a chemistry with how it's going to come together.
No, and it has to read seamlessly. It cannot be something where it's like, oh yeah, you can tell that's written by Gauri and that's written by Vish.
Yeah.
And, and like, I'll give an example. Like, there's an incident, a very sort of milestone incident in the journey of the table where we had to close for 3 weeks because of a fire incident, right? So you'll have to read more to hear what actually went down. But I wrote my version of what happened, and then there was the version of one of our colleagues who was on the ground, and I think that comes together really beautifully because it's two perspectives on the same incident, and you obviously brought to light the incident about from the perspective of the team member, and I brought mine.
No, that was really lovely actually, because I remember, I mean, finally, the lens that you were insisting on did come to light when I spoke to Sushant. I think Sushant had a very emotional journey because he was alone. You guys were in San Francisco when the fire happened. It's kind of Armageddon. Things have ended. You know, when a fire happens at a restaurant, means like aag lagi hai, like khatam, like thode din ke liye band hai. But like it was. I mean, I think what Sushant brought to the table and then what you brought to the table, because I remember there was a certain fatigue that had also set in with you guys circa 2014, 15, 16, because I think it struck you all that this is not a luxe job. It's a 24/7, 365 day job, you know, running a restaurant. And you all were sort of sometimes exhausted. You all were taking a holiday after a lot of things, and then this had happened.
Yeah, and it's not something you go away on holiday, but you're not ever really 100% on holiday, right? You might physically be in a different place, but you're still with one ear to the ground as far as what's happening back home in this business. And you're right, it's a 24/7 business, and the last phone call you ever want to get is to say that the restaurant's caught fire. But anyway, you'll have to read the book to know what actually happened.
And I have to tell you something, like, you know, with this fire chapter that we brought to life is when I realized that, oh my God, this is a really visual journey, you know, like it was not, quote unquote, a hagiography anymore. It was like sort of documentary-ish. We were getting into different zones. It was getting more visual. We were getting more perspective. I think we packed in quite a bit.
Yeah, and we've talked about, I mean, on this podcast, I actually talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and in different industries, and one of the things I always ask them is about, how they deal with a team, especially if they're in the service industry, and how, how they sort of motivate people to sort of be there for the long haul, and that's such an important part of our business, right? Hospitality, it's all about the people. You remember all the people that you've interacted with at the restaurant, and that doesn't just happen automatically. It takes a lot for that to happen, and so it was really important to me to bring out that team in and their story and their version of events. And I think there are quite a few characters that have made their way into the book, which I'm sure people who've been to the table or come there regularly or have been there would have interacted with them. So that's it's a fun narrative, and it's a very brutally honest story where we've even talked about when people have moved on, right, and have moved on from this business and how we've handled that situation. And it's probably not what you expect to read. So there's a lot of...
Or the chef would not share his recipes.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
This this business is... I mean, it's probably maybe in many different industries, but it's truly unique, with the characters you have to deal with, the hours of it's 24/7. You don't have a weekend. In fact, you far from have a weekend. It's just, I think there's nothing like it, and yet it's one of those businesses that everyone around you experiences. It's something that everyone goes out to a restaurant, right, at some point or the other to dine. And you may not, you're part of this industry whether you're in it or not, right? Like, you as a diner,
it's a very city thing also, Gauri. I think, like,
it's the part of, it's a social infrastructure of a
city.
Yeah.
And whether it's a London or a New York or a Bombay, and Bombay has become so globally literate now that we actually competing with those cities right now. But it is very much a part of urban growing up, urban living, to just be like, hey, these are the places one hangs out at, or...
right, so you may not actually be in the business, but there's something about this business that you still want to know what's happening. Like, you can't not be interested in the behind the scenes of this. And I think that's what...
That tripped me out, man.
Yeah.
Like coming to a back kitchen. I didn't know a back kitchen existed. I just thought like in a kitchen, everything is made in the restaurant only. As in, whatever you order in a restaurant is made in the restaurant. I had no idea that a central kitchen. There were many. I'm not from the F&B industry, so things were coming to me like at a clip, because at some point you were sending me to the back kitchen. Sometimes I'd interview Sushant. Sometimes I'm interviewing Bhushan. But like the back kitchen in front of Bade Mia, but you're running the table. I was like, what's going on here? And I just love the dichotomies that came my way in documenting this journey. And I mean, the reader will decide for himself or herself. But but there was something like very kaleidoscopic, 70 Technicolor happening in the streets of Colaba while we were writing Diamonds for Breakfast.
Well, I hope that you pick up a copy and read it, and then I'll
Okay, then we'll just pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just for Masti, just 2 paragraphs that define the FN. So tell me any paragraph that you'd like to read.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Vish, before we leave our audience to hopefully be enticed into picking up a copy of this book, why don't you tease them with a reading?
So Gauri, I'm choosing actually a paragraph which relates to your adventures / misadventures with Miss T, the restaurant, the erstwhile restaurant that Jay and you opened. And which didn't work, let's be honest. And I think since we're talking so much about the F&B industry, and readers might pick up a thing or two from the only 2 paragraphs I'm reading from the chapter. The rest they'll have to take the trouble to buy the book and read. Iconic success comes at a cost. It imperils the future, ironic as it sounds. A good example is a Hollywood blockbuster which spawns a sequel or a threequel, neither of which sets the cash registers jingling at the box office. Jaws 2 was never quite Jaws, even though it had a bite, claim some cinephiles. And Jaws 3 was a full-on turkey. However, in the world of cinema, the verdict is delivered by a popcorn-chomping jury over a fervid weekend. The arithmetic is quite simple. A film releases on a Friday, and by Monday, the writing is pretty much, or ugly much, on the wall. In the world of fine dining, the verdict is delivered over a cruel 3-month honeymoon.
Beautiful. Even if I say so myself. Well, I hope that's going to entice people into picking up a copy of the book. And I'd love to hear, and I'm sure you would too, any feedback, any thoughts, good thoughts only. Please do write into us wherever you can find us on Instagram. And Vish, where can people find you other than in some low-key bylane of Colaba?
Oh my God.
Oh my God, are you still on Facebook? Do you still have a Hotmail email address?
Well, I don't have a Hotmail, but I'm still on Facebook. I've just recently opened my Insta.
Oh yeah. What is your Insta handle, Vish?
It's The Wishing Well.
Spelled with a V.
With a V.
Of course.
The well is W.
Yeah. The Wishing
like
Well.
Vishwas. Vishwas.
Well, so you can find Vishwas on Instagram, Facebook, and possibly in Colaba at some point. And we'd love to hear
Voodoo.
from you. Shut down. Probably thanks to you. But we'd really love to hear from you. And of course, please grab a copy of the book. I promise it'll make you laugh at some point and just enjoy a little slice of Bombay history through our eyes. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with a little bit more sauce from Diamond's Breakfast.
Hey folks, this is your host Anubhav Gupta. I want to tell you all about Club Paisa Vaisa. This is a premium tier offering for fans of the show. Members of this club have a few privileges and let me tell you about them. Members will get access to episodes 3 days prior to the release. Members will get the archival access to all Paisa Vaisa episodes starting from day 1. And the non-members will still get access to the latest 15 episodes. I'll bring you weekly host insights, giving you my personal learnings from each episode on the show, and all of this will come with a completely ad-free experience. Finally, in 2023, we have some exciting plans for new exclusive content that is available only for members. You can go to club.ivmpodcast.com/paisa or click on the link in the description and sign up today. As an introductory offer, it's at ₹699 for a one-year membership. Note that starting 2023, all Paisa Vaisa episodes will become a part of Club Paisa Vaisa, and the non-members will get access to the latest 15 episodes. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back to this episode with Vishwas Kulkarni. Welcome back, Vishwas. So this is, by the way, on the show we have a session called the Rapid Fire session. And, you have to say the first thing that comes to your mind. So I always start by asking our guests what their go-to comfort food is. Yeah. So now I've had more than 100 guests or whatever on the show. And my idea is that if all else fails, I'm going to open a restaurant and then just take their answer from each guest. And hopefully that'll be a success, a recipe for for a restaurant, because it's all everyone's favorite things. But tell us, Vish, so what's yours?
Well, mine is a sweet corn chicken soup.
Oh my God, I love that too.
No, there's something about it.
You're right.
And
Do you add the chili vinegar and the Worcester sauce that comes with it?
Yes, I do. My mother actually ran a Worcester sauce company. So, in the 80s, she had a Worcester sauce company called Wadbees. And Mummy, I grew up in Navy Nagar because my dad was in the army. And she was like, let me teach you some table manners. And also, she would take me to Mandarin restaurant, which used to be opposite the table, where I think some LPQ or something else has opened, come and gone. I don't know what is there now.
It's a Pizza Express.
Oh, God. Okay, that's not bad. I mean, whatever rocks your boat. But I used to come to the Mandarin, I used to have this sweet corn chicken soup, and I still order it, not from the Mandarin, but once in a while when I'm feeling like I need a little bit of self-love.
Vish, so opposite Mandarin was Nanking. And that's where...
Love Nanking.
Exactly. And so we used to go there for a lot of that family weekend outing. I distinctly remember the restaurant, and the one thing I would eat was sweet corn chicken soup.
You're kidding me, right?
No, and I'm not just saying this. And even today... usually if we're staying somewhere and I want room service and they have it on the menu, that's my go-to. So God, Vish, we have so much more in common than we thought.
No, and something else that's gone off the charts for some reason is, do you remember shark fin soup?
No, I don't push it. I do remember it on the menu, but I was weirded out by the idea of drinking.
But it used to be really cool. But it's not, I think due to ecological reasons, it's no longer...
You think?
It's no longer on the map, so to speak. But sweet corn chicken soup, yes.
That
anytime with Worcester, soy.
The chickens aren't going out of fashion.
Oh, no, chicken's not going to go out of fashion for a very long time. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm probably going to get lynched for saying half the stuff I did. But anyway... okay, I have to ask you actually. So what's behind the name Diamonds for Breakfast?
Well, Diamonds for Breakfast comes from one of my favorite songs called Fabulous Lover by Amanda Lear. And sometimes I post songs on Facebook, songs that I love. And I posted Diamonds for Breakfast. I posted Amanda Lear's Fabulous Lover. And the image that came up, and I never knew, I only knew the single from a vinyl of covers that my mother had bought from Rhythm House in 79. And there was, it just said Amanda Lear, Diamonds for Breakfast. And it was Amanda Lear, the singer, and she's crying tears of diamonds. I hope we're not crying tears of diamonds when the book is released. But I just found Diamonds for Breakfast to be this really sexy, compelling title to have. Especially because...
So I didn't know, when you suggested it, I didn't know this whole history to the name. But to me, it just encapsulated the table. We don't do breakfast, but it's literally South Bombay. It just had this...
It had the South Bombay lush, recherche vibe. And I was like, oh my God, Diamonds for Breakfast. And I remember in the beginning, we had a working title, Gauri. We can discuss, since this is going to be the behind the scenes moment. we had a working title called Feeding the Glitterati.
Which we always knew would never be the title. to
At
the
one
book.
point, I was sold on it, and everybody's like,
Only you were sold on it.
Only I was
Yeah.
sold on it, and
Yeah.
everybody was like, "Oh my god, gross!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my god, am I always going to be the trashy tabloid guy who likes feeding the glitterati?"
Always. I'm trying to get you out of it with this.
And I was
but
like, "Let's get
yeah.
a little posher, dude." And so then that's how Feeding the Glitterati became. Because at one point, you and Nilanjana was like, "Guys, what's the title?" And
I know, but you know our WhatsApp group is still called FTG.
of course
right?
it is.
Yeah.
It still is. You know?
Forever. FTG forever.
And I think the subsequent
I
groups.
think FTG, Feeding the Glitterati, will only be ever on WhatsApp, and that's as far as it's getting.
And DFB has been around for a few other things like art direction, photography, and
Yeah,
all.
because then we started including like other people, and then they would get freaked out if like the group was called FTG, but then it didn't have anything to do with the book.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you and Nilanjana actually have pushed me in the right direction quite a bit. All credit where it's due, So yeah, that's how it came about.
So Vish, going back to the rapid fire, this hasn't been very rapid, but who are your favorite authors?
Oh my God! Now that I'm all authoring,
Oh, I know.
my favorite.
These are like these are like practice questions for you now when you do these interviews and you're going to get asked this.
Fingers
this
crossed,
is, yeah, I know.
guys. But well, my favorite author, fiction-wise, is John Banville. He's this amazing Irish author with genuinely an amazing command over the language and just a dexterity with how it's almost like it's genuinely poetic how he writes. My favorite non-fiction writer is V.S. Naipaul. I think he can.
God, Vish, you're so clever. And, like,
What else? What am I supposed to say?
you read all these like big books and all.
No, I actually started reading books because I became it's an occupational hazard. If you're a journalist or a writer, then you gotta pick
You
up
read.
books. Yeah,
Gotta read.
and you write occasionally.
And what else, Vish?
Gauri, can I do a rapid fire with you?
God, fine.
What's your favorite restaurant? What's your worst restaurant?
Vish, who's your favorite editor that you've ever had and your worst editor that you've ever had?
I think it's a good time to close this podcast
I think so too.
and call it a day.